to the spot. And then he smiled. And every erogenous zone, including a few she hadn't known existed until that moment, did the wave. Just the person I was looking for. Duke hung his helmet on a handlebar and headed up the steps toward her, still wearing black wraparound sunglasses and his jacket. She wondered, not for the first time, if he ever wore them while he had sex. Would you be able to see your own reflection as he fucked you? Proud at the calm in her voice, Carmella smiled like she hadn't just been imagining riding his cock while he wore sunglasses so she could watch herself. Me? Did Ginger get into something? She gave a look toward the dog, whose normally erect ears were even perkier at the approach of the guy with the bones. Duke bent to give Ginger a scratch behind the ears. Nah, she's a sweetheart. It's her owner I'd like to talk about. There was honey and lazy afternoons in his voice. Charming. He tucked the sunglasses into his shirt pocket and his pale green eyes took her in. Laugh lines only made him more attractive. He had a tiny smattering of gray at his temples, but it worked with the gold and caramel tones of his hair that was closely trimmed at the sides, long and thick at the top. He had some sort of nouveau rockabilly thing happening. Her fingers itched to reach out and touch. She shook her head, disgusted with how flustered he always seemed to make her. He'd been her neighbor for going on 2 years, so there was no reason to get fluttery. But every single time she spoke to him, he seemed to turn her into a twit. Ginger barked, and Carmella pushed the storm door open. Sorry, where are my manners? Come in. She let the familiarity of her front entry calm her a little as she bent to free Ginger from the harness and leash. Duke's hand landed on her elbow when she stood again. Here, let me help you with your bags. She shrugged free of the totes slung over one shoulder, repressing a shiver as his fingers brushed the side of her neck. Carmella thanked him as he hung them on the peg. Removing herself from the temptation to touch him or his leather jacket, Carmella stepped back with a smile. You have excellent manners. Your parents did a good job. The army gets most of the credit for that. Again the grin. Want some iced tea? I was just going to make more. Of course, she'd been pondering whether or not to add a big dollop of whiskey to hers, but those were easily changed plans. Sure. He placed his hand at the small of her back as he followed her through the house and into her kitchen, which really threw a wrench into her plan of trying not to think about this big, tall, broad-shouldered man right behind her. He took up a lot of space. His scent seemed to push itself ahead of everything else. The electricity of his body seemed to hum from him on a frequency she wanted a lot more of. Duke was a toucher. Not in a creepy way at all, but he frequently brushed his fingers over her forearm or a shoulder when they spoke. In another man, she'd have said something or made enough of a movement away that her "don't touch me" would have been clear. But she liked it when he did it, so she allowed herself that sensual treat. She pointed to a stool at the kitchen island. Have a seat and tell me what brings you here at 11 in the morning. Ginger kept staring at Duke lovingly until Carmella sighed. Ginger, leave the man alone. So easy. Give her a bone and she'd love you forever. Aw, she just wants some attention. It's okay, I've got some. Duke leaned down and gave Ginger enough scratches and rubs until she made a groaning sound of joy and fell over on her side. Carmella wanted him to do something to her to make her create that sound too. And she bet he could. With any combination of his hands, mouth, and that roll of quarters he carried around in his pocket that was probably a cock that got shit done. And as if he'd heard her thoughts, he flicked his gaze up from the dog to her and smiled, bringing a blush to heat her cheeks and neck. I have a proposition for you. She blinked, clearing her throat as she kept her hands busy putting tea bags in the mugs. You do? If it had anything to do with